Okay, we can start. So today we're going to discuss about 2018 question paper. We'll do the theory parts, and you will see almost all the questions have been done in the class already, and we will just refer to that only. And some statements, the quotations will be there in all the ethics paper, and that will be random. And by seeing the quotation, connecting to all the dots that we have discussed in the classes, you should be in a position to explain that. Maybe you will get Mahatma Gandhi's quotation, or Rabindranath Tagore, Swami Vivekananda, or Abdul Kalam. We have seen different cases. So that's how the theory part will be designed. Okay, so 130 125 marks will be there with this theory part, and then balance will be case study. So let's look into the first question, something which is very familiar to you here. We have discussed the similar question in the previous paper also, 2019 also, and you will see this kind of questions in all the question paper. State the three basic values. Basic values. Now here it has to be universal in nature in the context of civil services and bring out their importance. So we have discussed so much of Nolan committee recommendations and various other values and virtues we have discussed. So what do you think are the most important three? Last session also I have given you the answer for this. So you can talk about the most important value as integrity. And I'm not here to explain what is integrity and what you will write under this and all. We have already covered all these. Okay, so integrity is one of the most important. Integrity or honesty, both you don't want to write together, because only three you need to write. You might be knowing 10s and 12s and 15s, but you take the best three and write. Okay, then I will go for compassion. There is no point in writing honesty when there is integrity is there. So I'll go for compassion. Here also I'm not going with the word meaning. If any one of you missed that session, we have done it already. Empathy, sympathy, compassion, and how empathy and sympathy and empathy and compassion all are different in terms of degree of activity. Everything is covered in detail. Okay, so then we can also go with what else? Integrity is good one, compassion, and then we can say impartiality. You're always with tolerance. In the last session also you're talking about tolerance. Okay, so tolerance is one of the good value, but more than that, impartiality, it will be better. Or dedication to public service. Dedication to public service. Now I see I won't make any compromise between these two. So integrity and compassion should be there. If the question is about three important values, I will write that. And this is I'm leaving to you. You can choose any one of this. Since compassion is there, there is no point in writing empathy. Since integrity is there, there is no need to write honesty. It will be a kind of repetition. Okay, then other values like probity you can write, prudence you can write. Okay, all this responsiveness you can write, all these tolerance you can write. All these are important values, but since the question is asked specific, the three values which are universal in nature, and all these are universal in nature. So I will pick this and this as the most important three values that I'm going to write in the paper. Now you also need to explain this. Now if the question is asked, you need to explain what are the three values, and also you need to tell the challenges faced by civil servants also. Okay, so what are the challenges faced in this case, what are the challenges faced in this case, and that also maybe in one or two lines you should be in a position to explain. Okay, second one, code of ethics and code of conduct. So do you need any more discussion here? We have done one session for this topic, code of conduct and code of ethics. So what is code of ethics? Code of ethics, if you see, code of ethics are general, right? General guidelines or general values that has to be followed, that helps in maintaining the ethical behavior of civil servants. So these are general in nature, right? So you can see, for example, the set of Nolan committee recommendation, set of ARC guidelines. All these are examples like openness, transparency, impartiality. All these are in general. So these are code of ethics. So something which are in general are coming under code of ethics. Now, what is code of conduct? These are the specific rules and regulations. See, since I've discussed in detail about this, I'm not going in depth of it. Specific rules and regulations. Now, this will be in the form of do's and don'ts. What are the procedures? Okay, so everything will be clearly mentioned. So, which will also help in maintaining the ethical behavior in an organization. So, for example, I've given you All India Service rules. Okay, so All India Service rules is there. All India Service Code of Conduct is there. Central Civil Service rules. Okay, so these are code of conduct. So, what is the difference here? This is objective in nature. Now, this is subjective in nature, and the implementation of this will be a problem, right? Code of ethics, since it is general in nature, whether you have violated code of conduct or not, this is very subjective, but this is objective. And here there won't be punishment or anything, but here there can be punishment also. For example, if you see here code of ethics, when I say political neutrality, you have to be politically neutral, but nothing specific is mentioned here. But when it comes to code of conduct, in the rules it is mentioned that a person cannot be a member of political party. What does that mean? It is very specific. You cannot be a member of political party. So that will ultimately help in maintaining what? Political neutrality. Okay, so understand, even though this is general and this is specific, both has to be followed. Both are complementary and mutual stimulus and help in maintaining the ethical behavior of the civil servant. So you need to explain. See, one thing that you need to understand is, guys, you don't want too much of contents. Okay, so you just need to write for 10 marks, and you need to write 130 words maximum. And what I've explained here, that itself is enough for you. And towards the end, you conclude that both are mutually connected and mutual stimulus, so that it will actually help in the ethical behavior of the civil servant. Okay, and you also need to mention the challenges faced also. Towards the end, maybe 1 or 2 lines, you should be in a position to write the challenges also. So that's about this question. Okay, so I'm moving to the next one. Now you can see here, this question is about public interest. Now, if you remember last session also, we have discussed about a question that was public service. So here, what do you mean by public interest? And what are the principles and procedures to be followed by the civil servants in public interest? So explain what is public interest. What is public interest? Something which is affecting the larger public, right? So communitarian concept, the welfare by, the welfare of the community, or something which is affecting the public at large, or the welfare measures that is done for the society. All these are what you can say public interest. What are the principles and procedures which has to be followed? That is something which you need to discuss objectively. So the first part, you need to answer what is public interest. Now, how can you say that? It deals with general welfare of public at large. That means it is not for a specific group. Like we can say this is in general, it is for the entire community, right? There is no personal interest which is involved here. That is entire society should get benefit out of it. Okay, and this is, we are talking about the legitimate interest of the public. And when we talk about legitimate interest of the public, this should not be at the cost of the interest of others. That means it should not infringe the right of any other person, the right to life of other persons, or right to freedom of expression of other persons. For that matter, any fundamental right or any human right of any other person should not be affected. Then we can say it is a larger public interest. So the welfare of the community, the welfare of general public, but at the same time, it should be legitimate interest. It should be for legitimate purpose. It should not affect the rights of any other sections. Okay, so now what are the principles? So firstly, you have to follow the principles of utilitarianism. What is this concept of utilitarianism? That is maximum good for maximum people. We have already discussed. I'm not getting into that. Okay, so this is something which you can write and you can explain this. Communitarianism is also the same, maximum good for the community. Okay, and then you can also write rule of law. Then you can talk about natural justice, principles of natural justice. That means everybody have to be heard, everybody have to be taken, and everybody have to be considered equally. Okay, so these are the procedures which has to be followed by the civil servants in public interest. Now, everything else, if you feel like you need to write something more, it is up to you what all things that we have discussed that you can add in your answer. But these are the procedures. Since it is specific that the procedures, that's the reason why I'm talking about principles of natural justice. That has to be followed everywhere, any situation. Okay, rule of law, that has to be followed. Okay, so those are the points which you can write under this. Now see, this is again we have discussed already. We discussed about Right to Information Act, and there I have told you it is empowerment of citizens. But here the statement is all about it is not all about citizens empowerment alone. It essentially redefines the concept of accountability. So we have understood that the act is for transparency and for accountability. We have in fact discussed this when we discussed the probity in governance. We have discussed various concepts related to probity in governance. In that, one of the dimension of probity was accountability and also transparency. There we have discussed about Right to Information Act, and we have discussed in detail about that. So there is no point in getting into that. So we have seen how it can ensure accountability. We have also seen what are the challenges in ensuring accountability, or what are the challenges or the problems with respect to RTI, Right to Information. Okay, so in fact, ARC calls it beacon light of transparency, and it has become major source of social accountability, and it empowers citizens, right? There is a right to information movement also which is going on, and even most of the women's are also participating. So that lead to not only citizen empowerment or women empowerment, but that also ensures accountability. So that keeps a check on corruption, and that keeps a check on any other activities by the government, so thereby ensuring accountability. Okay, so, and also when you are checking corruption, and because of this, the larger public interest will be served, and the problem of red tapeism is actually supposed to come down. But since the disadvantage that we have discussed is because the civil servant is afraid of this right to information movement and all, so the decisions are not taken so faster. So red tapeism is actually increasing, the decision making is actually delayed. So what is supposed to happen? It should have come down, but it is actually increasing. So that is actually a problem. And we have also discussed the instances where the right to information actually misused, right? So that is also one thing. Misuse of right to information and blackmailing, all these are the issues. So because of this, the public servant, the civil servant, or the public officials is not ready to take decision that lead to red tapeism. So on one hand, we can talk about accountability. How accountability? Because this lead to transparency. Now there is the civil servant is in the glass. It is covered. He is covered with glass only. Everything is transparent. So whatever actions that you're doing, whatever decisions that you're doing, everything is recorded, and that recorded is available to the public at large. So that is actually ensuring the accountability that prevent him from corrupt practices, and all those things are advantages, right? And it creates institutional mechanism of transparency. So these are the concept of accountability. It redefines accountability. But what are the problems? The problems is victimization of RTI activists. That also you need to write towards the end. Even all these advantages there, citizen empowerment is there, accountability is there, okay, transparency is improved, corruption has reduced, but still there are issues. One last line should be talking about that issues also, like the victimization of RTI activist. Somebody is coming up with RTI, next day you will see the dead body of that person. So victimization, and also you will see the instances of misuse of RTI. Okay, so now the challenge with respect to accountability is, last session we have discussed about Official Secrets Act. In that, some provisions are actually some exceptions are there in RTI. For example, section 8, okay, those issues falls under out of this act. So like political parties, judicial appointments, though some exceptions are there, so that may be hindering the accountability or transparency in those areas, and I've given you the examples also. So again, this is a very direct answer. There is no question of doubts or any confusion here. Any doubts in any of the 4 questions that we have discussed now? The point is, what I want to tell you is the questions are going to be very easy only. We know everything, we have covered everything, and it's all about the way you're going to answer that. in that 6-7 minutes that you're getting for each question in 130 words. See, it doesn't matter whether it is given 150 words or not. It is a maximum word limit which is written. So you don't want to write 150 words. You need to write in between. This range is what you need to follow. 130 to 150. Now, never think that you can write more than 150 words. You can write it. You can. Nobody is reducing your mark even if you write 160 or 160, 170 words. But ultimately, what you're doing is, while doing this, you're compromising one other question. That is going to affect you only. There is no question of writing more and you are getting less mark in that. You will get more mark, but the problem is you have to compromise on the other question. So always stick to this range. In when you are writing the mains, you have to stick to this range, 130 to 150. Never go beyond this. Okay, now 130 words, if you need to write, what you need, just understand, this is one thing that you need to understand. To write 130 words, you need valid three valid points. If you have, you're done with that answer. Okay, understand this and make it in your mind. In ethics paper, if you have three valid points, any theory questions is done. What you need all is the three valid points. Then case studies anyway, question is there and you know the approach, then you can solve it. Theory paper, you just need three valid points. And do you think that you need to read n number of books and all the books which is available in the market? No. That is the reason why I told you, stick to one book, that is Chronicle. And see why Chronicle is because it is not because it is a purely very good book which is giving you all the ethical knowledge and everything. No, it is giving you complete idea about all the important terms which is there and which can be asked with examples and with case studies. So you will get very good idea. So once you get that idea, then it is there in your mind. The question can be asked in any way. You should be in a position to write. There is no need to read any other books for this topic, in my opinion. Once you know that and you can compare it with all the question papers, you will understand that you hardly need 3-4 valid points for any question. You should be in a position to answer it. Just keep that point in mind. Now see, this is again a very expected question only. Conflict of interest, direct question. What is conflict of interest? Now here, what they're asking, illustrate with example the difference between actual and potential conflict. Now okay, so this difference has to be made very clear. What do you mean by actual conflict of interest and potential conflict? See, the difference is, actual means currently when you're doing an act, whether there is a conflict of interest. Potential means you're doing something, is there any possibility that it can create a conflict of interest in future? Okay, so basically the decisions regarding public interest may be influenced by personal interest. That whether the public interest that you're taking as a civil servant or a public official, whether it is having any influence of your personal interest, that is what actually conflict of interest checking. So public interest versus private interest. Okay, see this question, Saurav Ganguly is the president of BCCI. So can he be a coach for Delhi Daredevils? No, right? Because that is, coach means he's getting separate salary and he's holding a big position in BCCI as a president. So he cannot be. That is what conflict of interest, right? So as a public official, you the interest between, now as a BCCI president, he have so much of obligation and every team is equal for him, right? But if he is a coach also, then that is going to create the conflict of interest. I hope you understood. And that is the reason why when Shreyas Iyer made that comment when Ganguly and Ricky Ponting was there for us, that became very controversial with respect to this only, conflict of interest. So I hope that example will help you to understand it. So okay, so it is all about public interest versus private interest. When you're doing an action, you're doing it out of public interest, but is there any influence of your personal interest also? For example, you're granting some license to a company. Are you going to get any personal interest in that? That's the question here. Okay, so it can be organizational versus personal interest, or organizational versus public interest, or it can be public versus private interest. So in all these situations, you will see the conflict of interest. Okay, now the question is, I'll give you this example for this actual and potential conflict of interest. For example, you are a civil servant. A is a civil servant. Now you need to give some permission, some license to a company. Okay, so B is the director of the company. So B approach you for the permission. Now their company qualify, now B and C, two companies, let's say two companies. B and C, both companies are approaching you for some license or something, and B qualify all the requirements and everything is qualified. Okay, so now suppose you give this license. Okay, now is there any conflict of interest now? No, there is no conflict of interest. Now imagine a situation that C or D is your daughter or your son, and this D is working in the company. Okay, D is working in the company. So here, do you think there is a conflict of interest now? Yes, there is a conflict of interest at this stage. So this is the actual conflict of interest, because your son is already working in the company and the company is approaching you, even though you are you understood that the company is following all the requirements and everything, but still there is a conflict of interest here. Okay, now potential means, let's suppose this D is not part of this company now. Let's say he is going to be a part of the company, so he is going to apply for this job. Then that is going to be potential case of conflict of interest. In future, that can come. Okay, so I hope this is clear. Second case, what I'm saying is, now there is no connection for you and this company, so there is no conflict of interest. Now, actual conflict of interest is if somebody from your family is part of this company, right? Let's say your son is part of this company. So now clearly actual conflict of interest is there. Now, potential means if he want to become part of this company, then in future, that is what you mean by potential case of conflict of interest. Okay, any doubts, or do you want me to explain it further? Okay, so I hope that is clear. The next is a statement. You will see these statement questions are easy, and it is something which is equal to everyone. Nobody can prepare all the statements and the answers for that. You'll get the statement, see the statement, and have to connect it with all things that we have discussed in the class or all things that you have read from the text. Okay, so in looking for people to hire, you look for three qualities. What are they? Integrity, intelligence, energy. So intelligence means that IQ or EQ part. Energy also is required, right? These are the three important aspects that you are actually going to check. So when we talk about intelligence, that is definitely there for appointing someone. No, do you think that you are going to appoint a person who is having who's a nonsense? No, you are not going to appoint, right? You need, if you are an entrepreneur, if you are whether it is private organization or a public servant, whatever it is, you need some level of intelligence, right? IQ, EQ, or whatever language you want to say, that is required. Energy means it can be positive attitude or aptitude, okay, in the workplace. But more than this, what is required is integrity, right? So now the question is, and if they do not have the first, that means integrity, the other two will kill you. I don't think that I need to explain this. This is very self-explanatory only. So what is required? What is the ideal combination? The ideal combination will be, you need three. Integrity is required, intelligence is required, and what was the third one? Energy. So this kind of person is what actually required. Otherwise, what will happen? If he is of no integrity, he can use his knowledge, this intelligence and energy for the negative cause, right? So it can be used for vested interest, it can be used for negative cause, etc. You can give examples of Duryodhana, Osama bin Laden, these knowledgeable people, right, with intelligence and all, but still they use it for negative cause. So that is not considered good. So obviously this is required. This is required when you're employing people. This is equally required, integrity. Without that, they are going to, whether it is an organization or whatever it is, that is going to affect the organization also. Okay, so their intelligence, their brilliance may be used in a negative way if there is no integrity. Now, this is self-explanatory, guys, and you need to explain this. Okay, next one again is a statement. So in doing a good thing, everything is permitted, which is not prohibited expressly or by clear implication. So And this statement in a different language we have discussed in class in one session, that everything can be considered as permitted for doing a good thing, except explicitly if it is not prohibited. You got it? So that is a same statement. Examine the statement with suitable examples in the context of public servant discharging her duty. So you need to give one or two examples. Okay. So in the context of public servant. So this is something which you can explain, and what examples you can give. You can talk about various innovative measures taken by public servants, right? For improving the life of the people. If it is not prohibited, it may be allowed. But in all cases, it may not be possible also. There should be some restrictions. So everything has to be followed by using, law, procedure established by law. Otherwise, it can also create problem. That also should be there in your conclusion, right? Now, last session, if you remember, I have discussed about the concept of mens rea and actus rea. Okay, so there has to be, mens rea means the intention part. For any crime to happen, this is very much essential. The intention and also the action. So here, action is there. You might have done something wrong, right? But there is no intention, then that cannot be wrong. So the idea here is, you want to do good thing, so try to do everything which is not prohibited. So if that is going to benefit the society, you can do that. But ultimately, one exception is that towards the end, you need to tell that it is not possible that the civil servant should be allowed to do everything which is not prohibited explicitly, but still there has to be some procedure established by law, rule of law, etc. has to be followed. Just one line is required. Otherwise, you can talk about this. Why you can avoid red tapism, you can avoid delay in decision making, and all those things you can say. You can, for example, in a PDS shop. Okay, so some some good innovative measures you can do, so that you can tackle corruption, you can tackle leakages, etc. So those kinds of innovative measures by a civil servant has to be promoted. That's what you mean by this particular sentence. And see, it is again up to you the way you are going to write this answer. It will be different for different people. And I hope you can explain the desirability of that particular statement. Because the civil servants, individuals, they can do something innovative, obviously. It depends on their quality and the capacity. But this procedure established by law has to be followed. That is only one thing that you need to say. Okay, next question. With regard to the morality of actions, one view is that means is of paramount importance, and the other view is that the ends justify the means. Which view do you think is more appropriate? Justify your answer. So, yeah, tell me where we have discussed this. It is related to what? This is directly related to the thinkers that we have done, right? Which concepts is this? What you will write here? Utilitarianism, right? Utilitarianism versus deontology. We have discussed about two concepts. So duty-based ethics, or the means approach, means theory, and the ends theory. Ends theory is what we have discussed about utilitarianism, or this is also known as teleological theory, teleological approach. Means approach, this is what we have discussed as deontological approach. Immanuel Kant or even Mahatma Gandhi also, we have discussed the same approach. So here, means has to be followed correctly. It doesn't matter what is going to be the outcome. But what is this ends approach? If the end is good, it will justify the means. Whatever means that you followed, it is okay if the end is good. If the end is maximum good for maximum people. Maximum good for maximum people means maximum happiness for the maximum people, or the greatest happiness for the greatest number of people, then the means will be justified if the ends are good. Okay, now tell me which one in exam, which one you need to write. That if you need to take one, then which one you will have to select. You have to select this means approach. Why? You can say that this may provide a short-term benefit, but long-term it may, lead to bad situations, etc. That you can say. And every time, if you are following, sticking to the means, maybe the outcome will be slow, but it will be fruitful and it will be sustainable. But this may not be sustainable. For example, even in case of freedom struggle, if you talk about Mahatma Gandhi when went for non-violence, satyagraha and all, we took a long time to get freedom. But even then, the means were correct, right? Even then, we got a sustainable, strong foundation, and we had a very good democracy, and everything is good. But if we would have gone with the approach of, revolutionaries or the revolutionary terrorist or the militant nationalist, then what would have happened will be a entirely different scenario. There might be a military dictatorship, right? If we would have allowed this INA or naval mutiny, etc., to take care of the freedom struggle, then there would have been a military dictatorship in the future. We might not have this kind of democracy. So the point is, and if the ends theory will justify that, no, at any cost you get the freedom. That is what they will say. Okay. Or you can also say that this recent rape case was there, no, the four people were encountered by police. So what has to be done? The rape victims, you got the four accused, and you have to cast them, you have to put them for trial, and whatever outcome is there, they may be subject to capital punishment, or they may be getting the punishment. That is as per the procedure, that is as per the rule of law, that has to be followed. Instead, what happened? And this is also correct approach only, because the rapist, they are getting convicted and they are getting punished. The other approach was encounter. That is what actually happened recently. This is also correct in the people's perception. The end is there, but does that end justify the means? No. It may not be sustainable long term, because every time if the police is taking the law in their hand and they are going for this encounter killing, then what is the what is the need for this court and all these procedures and everything? So the point here is, you can write any examples, it is up to you. But when you're writing your answer, you have to tell that means have to be strictly followed for the long term benefit, and for any sustainable ends, the mean has to be strictly followed, even though the end may be delayed, the achievement of the goal may be delayed, but that is the best approach. Even Mahatma Gandhi's approach is also the same. Okay, so you should be supporting that view only. You got it? So utilitarianism is okay, it is good in some context, but even that encounter killing is considered and appreciated by public, because or you talk about a terrorist. Okay, so a police officer can do what? He can catch this terrorist, and he can put in front of the court, and in the trial he will be punished. So that is one case. Or the police officer can kill this terrorist. Now, will this be justified? Yes, it is justified. Why? Otherwise, this terrorist might have killed around 10 people or 100 people. So by killing that one person, you can avoid the death of 100 people. So what is this principle? This is maximum happiness, maximum good for maximum people. So killing of that terrorist is justified in that context, because it is providing maximum good for maximum people. Similarly, the killing of that rapist is justified, because otherwise they would have raped many other girls also. In that context, it is justified. But is that the real solution? No. Okay. So when you're writing answer, when you talk, you can say something, but when you write the answer, this is the approach that you have to follow. The means has to be correct. Now, in ethics paper, you can be very much open. You can write whatever you want. Okay, you can give any examples from your real life. They expect from the real life. It doesn't matter whether it is from movie, whether it is from the games. Okay, you can write anything. Okay, next is a very straightforward question. Suppose the government of India is thinking of constructing a dam in a mountain valley borne by forest and inhabited by ethnic communities. What rational policy should it resort to in dealing with the unforeseen contingencies? So what all will be the unforeseen contingencies or situations, and what all measures you can do here. Now here, see, one confusion people can have, or one misunderstanding or one mistake that you can make is, since it is mentioned that ethnic communities, you will stick to them. Most of the people, most I've seen, and I've evaluated the papers, so I've seen most of the people stick to this, and they will talk about the problems of ethnic communities and their rehabilitation, their resettlement, their emotional aspect, and their family, their culture, and all these things. But the question is not specific to ethnic communities. Yes, they are the group, we also want to take care of them, we will also talk about them, but the question is larger purview, right? Here unforeseen here we need to talk about the forest also, we need to talk about the animals also, not only this ethnic communities. Just because, see, that is how you need to broaden your horizon, your view. So if you can talk about the animals rights and animals resettlements, etc., the forest, you have to grow the forest which is going to be cut here, except if you can tell all these things, then it is going to be really good. But if you stick to this is one dimensional answer. Now, having said that, I hope you understood what you need to write here. There is no question of, explaining this. This is directly from disaster management only. You might have studied all those. So last session also, we have discussed about this debate, growth versus development, right? So this is a big debate, right? We need growth because the unquantifiable needs and greeds are there, and we have discussed this in the context of Mahatma Gandhi's statement, the environment versus development, the environmental ethics also we have discussed, development versus displacement also we have discussed. So here you will see this also, right? Who's going to be displaced here when that dam is coming? The tribal sections or the ethnic communities will be displaced. So when growth is there, displacement is there, so we have to take care of this issue we have already covered. So the main points that you need to write here. So the question is about what are the rational policy, right? So you can say that you have to take care of the forest. This is something which has to be done very well. And forest, trees, rivers, animals, mountains, all these are part of this, right? Rivers, mountain valleys or rivers, and the forest means trees are covered, animals, mountains, all these are considered as ends in themselves, not as a means to an end. You remember we have discussed about the concept of intrinsic value. Not only human beings have intrinsic value, they all these have intrinsic value. There are value for them. So that also need to be acknowledged, right? So we have to treat in that way. So you also need to ensure the safe rehabilitation of the wildlife near the habitat. That is one thing that you need to do. And proper embankments shall be made on the river channels, so otherwise the natural flow will be altered. So you have to take care of that natural flow of the rivers. And proper environmental impact assessment. Any question which is related to environment, you have to write this, whether it is in ethics or disaster management or whatever it is, you have to write this. Proper, or the feasibility of proper environmental impact assessment, or the checks has to be done properly. And you need to identify whether the dam is possible, or the dam which is going to be constructed is sustainable or not. Okay. And a disaster management plan has to be there. Whatever forest is going to be cut for this, that has to be regrown in some other area with a similar set of animals, similar set of species, etc. And most importantly, this group, the ethnic group which are going to be displaced or evicted, they also need to be taken care. And when you say they need to be taken care, they need to be taken care not only physically, their physical rehabilitation and resettlement. It can be done on the basis of land acquisition and rehabilitation and resettlement act, right? So you can also talk about LARR act. I hope you know this act. Okay. So rehabilitation, resettlement, not only physical, their emotional things has to be taken care, cultural. That means same kind of environment, if possible, you need to create, right? The psychological and the social settlement is also required for them. Okay, so all these are something which you need to write. They have to be compensated adequately. Okay, and they shall be given the first right to use any benefit which is coming out of this project, because it is at their cost the project is planned and executed. So any benefits which is coming out of this, they should be the first to use that benefit. Okay, so you have to follow a trusteeship approach, or proper disaster management plan should be there. Okay, social values have to be followed, proper rehabilitation resettlement has to be there, emotional and psychological rehabilitation, social rehabilitation, their culture should be prevented, proper compensation, all these things you can write. These are the rational policy that you can talk about. Yeah, any doubts here? We will stop here. We'll continue tomorrow with this discussion. Tomorrow we'll complete this, and tomorrow we'll complete the case studies also.